Hello there, my name is Olumide Adeleye, founder and CEO of the Twim Art Institute and Awarewa.tv. And today I have a very special message for you. As you know, this is the beginning of another year, and so I should say Happy New Year. It is particularly exciting because year 2020 was a year. 2020 for many people in the business world was one of those years that one would probably not pray for. It was a year in which people lost their jobs. It was a year in which revenues went down, companies folded up. It was a year in which people lost their lives. It was a year in which people lost hope. It was the year of the pandemic. The last time we had something like this in the history of the world was about 100 years ago. But as bad as the year 2020 may have seemed, 2020 was also the year that changed the world. In fact, 2020 was the beginning of a new decade, and I can tell you for sure that that year has determined the course of the next 10 and maybe even 100 years. We've seen new technologies emerging. We've seen new trends. We've seen videos becoming mainstream. We've seen virtual communication. We've seen all sorts of things. And so for somebody who's running a small business in a country like Nigeria that is now officially in a recession, what are the things that you should note? What are the things that you should be doing? What are the things that you should stop doing? Today's broadcast is going to be a very special one, and it is my New Year gift to you. In this broadcast, I am going to be talking, but I am also going to bring on a very special guest who's none other than my wife, Moremi Adeleye. We run the Twim Art Institute together, and she also runs a consulting firm known as the Refuge Firm. So we're going to be talking from our own personal experiences of year 2020. We're going to be sharing the lessons that we learned, and we're going to be talking about the things that you should do in order to reposition yourself for a great year 2021. If this sounds like something that you're interested in, make sure you sit down, grab your popcorn and your Coke, and enjoy this edition. Click on that subscribe button if you've not already done so. I'll be back right after this timeout. So Moremi, once again, you're welcome on my show.
Thank you.
So year 2020 has come and gone. For entrepreneurs out there, for people particularly in the small business sector, and maybe even for employees as well, what are the things that you think they should know about? Let us begin with the pandemic itself. What are the implications of living in a post-pandemic world?
Thank you. 2020 has been a very unusual year, like Olumide said, and it caught almost everybody off guard. We were not prepared for it. It came unawares. And the beautiful thing about that year, because it caught a lot of us off guard, it gave us the great opportunity to position ourselves for the now and the future. The truth is, the world is not going back to what it used to be. I mean, we all thought that by now the pandemic would be over, but we're still in it. So the world is definitely not going back. But one thing I would like to leave with everybody is that 2020 gave us the opportunity to learn. I think that it's vital to remember the lessons that we learned and not to lose out of them or lose focus. So for example, we've learned how to do business beyond borders. That is something that, for me, it's like the greatest blessing of 2020, doing business beyond borders. So suddenly, going into spaces physically no longer really matter. I mean, they still do to some extent, but they no longer really matter. And for every business person out there, how are you maximizing that opportunity? The second one following very
So
closely.
before you go into the second one, picking on that one, spaces, physical spaces not having the kind of importance that they used to have. So are you saying that for somebody who's just starting a business, say in Nigeria, in year 2021, are you saying that they don't need to be thinking about having an office, or what are you saying?
Yes, I'm saying that. For example, a person is interested in going into photography. It's such that you don't need to spend your energy trying to build a studio. You can use everything else that you have around you. In fact, how do you run a photography business in a situation where you do not want to have personal contact? Maximizing the outdoor spaces suddenly have become important. The point I'm trying to make is that businesses have been forced to think beyond their regular structures and plans and operations to look for things that work. And COVID gave us the perfect opportunity to maximize the airspace. So if you're going into business as a fresher, instead of spending all your time trying to get an office space, why not spend the time solidifying your strategy? And, find what works for you and find how to make those connections, how to do business using the airspace.
So maybe an applicable example for that would be our own situation. We run a school, the Twin Art Institute, and then COVID-19 comes and the government says everybody shut down, at least for those in the educational sector and a number of other sectors as well. The government says, shut down, you cannot have classes until we say so. And then that goes on for about 5 months. In such a situation, for a school owner, what do? You have to continue to survive, even though you cannot have your clients, your customers in your space physically. And so for a lot of school owners, it has meant looking at options like e-learning and things like that. And I know some people even used WhatsApp. Yes. I know people have had to adapt in different ways. But, maybe one really important lesson from that is the world is very fortunate. We have an advantage that they didn't have in 1920, which is that now we have technology. Yes. We have phones. Yes. That also implies that we have internet access, we have, connectivity, and then we have social media. And so all of a sudden, we're able to make use of these things and communicate regardless of the fact that we're not necessarily meeting people. So I think that leads me to the next thing I would like to ask you, which is, what do you think about the use of social media and business, especially for this year, 2021?
So I think that social media has sort of taken central stage. For businesses, it's important to recognize what works now. Social media has become key. And the interesting about social media is it gives you opportunity for businesses to move beyond the real formal terrain to get to a level where people get to know the heart of your business. They get to know the people behind the business. They get to feel your thoughts. And you can be there day and night in people's faces. And it's funny. There's the scripture of, this book of the law will not depart out of your mouth. You meditate upon it day and night, so you shall have good success. I've discovered that for businesses, the ability to keep yourself in people's faces it plays a very critical role in how far that business will go. For example, in the world of events, now we know that the world has sort of paused on events. However, people are still doing events virtually. So in the world of events, people are probably still looking for event planners that will deliver top-notch conferences over, a conferencing app or something like that. Now, how do those people work? How do they get to work? How do they select them? You'll probably go online, look for people who have handled conferences in 2020, conferences that were as strong as their physical edition, when they could gather physically. And you check out people that planned those ones and organize them. But how do you find those people? They went online. They put out their profiles. They put out pictures of the conferences they organized. They walked us through the processes. They did videos of them, working, setting up behind the scenes, of their computer analysts working, and all of that. suddenly we feel that, oh, those are great people, that's the great team to work with. And that is how it works. It really doesn't matter whether or not they knew the nitty-gritty of their work. I mean, we saw the results, but we were able to connect with their processes, and that has become so important. So suddenly, businesses can sort of hack their way in an interesting way. Growth hacking has become very real to us now. So it's I feel that we're in an era of limitless possibilities. And what makes that more interesting is that people no longer have to spend as much to run those businesses as they would have spent pre-2020. So it's a brilliant win-win for businesses in 2021 and beyond.
Going back to that first thing that we were talking about, maybe instead of having an office, all of a sudden it's more important to be active, to be present on Instagram, or to be on Facebook, or to be on social media. All of a sudden, like you said, people are going to those spaces to decide on the people that they need for whatever jobs that they want to get done. And that is something that can happen only in today's world. Yeah. And one example that comes to mind is the use of billboards. I can remember that some time ago, if we wanted to publicize, one of the ways we would have done it was to use billboards and try to get everyone to, come up with a nice design and put it out there, spend a lot of money on those billboards. But all of a sudden, that for us is no longer an effective strategy. In fact, it's almost like those billboards don't yield any results anymore. And you find out that you spend much less online, but you achieve much more. So it's a beautiful change, in my opinion, that the world has brought on us all of a sudden. Okay.
And, talking about billboards, I think that one point that we must emphasize there, which you sort of mentioned, is that businesses need to recognize what works for them. Because what works for us, we're in a creative space, may not necessarily work for another business. However, regardless of the business, it's important to have your social media presence. It's the new age. It's the new normal. It's the new go-to place. So if you want to do business and excel and thrive in deep waters in 2021, get your social media working.
So that's our very first point. In this year, 2021, you need to realize that businesses have moved beyond the physical boundaries of buildings. And you need to make use of the internet and make use of the structures that the 21st century has provided for you to use. So the second thing that we've learned in year 2020, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of organizations had to downsize. And we were also in situations where we had to consider such options. So, Moremi, what are some of the things that we've learned with relation to human resources?
I think that one of the critical things we've learned in relation to human resources is your team is so important. Your team will determine whether you fly and make it as an organization, or whether you keep struggling and keep your head bowed. Your team is everything. And one of the things we've realized is that when it comes to building a team, sometimes you would keep restructuring and all of that until you find your rhythm. And I think that entrepreneurs, especially people who run small businesses, should not be afraid to restructure until they find their rhythm. Because oftentimes we're afraid of going through the process of finding the rhythm, because sometimes you feel that if you keep, all those things that we've learned in management, that if you have high staff attrition, it means that your management is wrong and all of that. It could mean that, but sometimes it could also mean that your organization is going through the process that would eventually lead to stability. So find your rhythm. Take your time to find your rhythm. The other thing we've learned is that when it comes to hiring, don't be emotional about it. If you discover at the point of hiring or during the probation period before you make your staff permanent, that for some reason they are unable to work with the vision, work with the values, and all of that of the organization, even if they are good at what they do, sometimes it's important to evaluate and weigh what is most important. Is it the actual process of getting the job done, or the process of getting the organization to work and finding their place in the organization? You know what you want for your business. So once you find what you want, find people that can plug into what you want. And for me, I think that the third thing that we learned as an organization is have processes, have structures in place that would ensure that every single person you bring on board as a member of staff is delivering value. It's funny, things as simple as, measuring productivity, measuring their utilization. Are they well utilized? Are they earning their pay? Things like measuring their effectiveness, all those things are very important, and it will shock you, to surprise you. Honestly, it surprised us. It completely shocked us that things as basic as what I just said can transform an entire organization. Because
because you then get to realize that maybe the people that were performing so many activities really were not doing anything. Maybe it was all about motion and no results. And one of the things that can kill an organization very quickly is activity but no results. So you need to have metrics in place to measure results and to make sure that people are truly productive. Because, one of the things that I was going to ask about is, look at the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. It basically is that 80% of the results you get come from 20% of your people. And what that means to an entrepreneur is that in a year like year 2020, where you have to introduce austerity measures, what do? You take away the people, the 80% that are redundant, the 80% that are responsible for just 20% of your results. When we introduced some of these things that you talked about, measuring effectiveness, measuring utilization, and measuring some of those things, it became very easy to tell who was working and who wasn't working.
I'm sure that our listeners, I'm sure the audience, those who are entrepreneurs would be able to identify what I'm about to say. And that is, sometimes in a team, the people who are boldest, the people who talk the most, are not necessarily the ones getting the job done. But you see, it's very easy to fall into that deceptive trap where you're unable to really identify the people getting things done. How do you then identify people getting things done? By setting systems in place, the matrices. But when you have those measures in place, what you will then discover is that suddenly people have nowhere to hide. It's remarkably clear. It's like a breath of fresh air. People suddenly have nowhere to hide. So whereas before you'd have heard excuses on why things were not done and stuff like that, suddenly with simple matrices, what you have is zero excuses. I mean, it would even be lame to give certain kinds of excuses. So I think that organizations in 2021, take your time to put structures in place. If you need help putting structures in place, get it. But put structures in place.
I think, not to overflog this, but it's extremely important, because one of the things you will see is that a lot of small businesses cannot survive in Nigeria. And one of the most important reasons, I think that this might be the biggest reason. It is not about capital. Capital is important. That's a whole complete discussion on its own. But I think that a bigger problem is this issue of staffing and the loss of revenue due to very low levels of productivity. And so if you don't put the right structures in place, you're going to end up with a system where you have a lot of action, a lot of activity, but very little results to show for it. Yes. Do the right things. Look for apps, look for systems, set up systems, and you might be shocked. You might be shocked to discover that the people who are really lifting the heavyweight in your organization are not the ones that you thought, are not the ones who are earning the highest. Maybe the ones that you're paying all your revenue to are not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And maybe you really can do without them. Mm. If you're an employee, maybe one thing I would like to say is that in 2021, a philosophy of, like the Yoruba people would put it, Ogata Ogauta, Owala, meaning that if the boss, if the company makes sales or not, you as the employee would get paid. That kind of mentality is very wrong, because people who think like that never go far. So if you want to go far in year 2021, especially in this period of the pandemic, organizations are evaluating their processes. Organizations are trying to know the people who are really useful to them. So this is the time to put in your best. This is the time to ensure that you really are a plus factor to that organization in which you work. You know, like you mentioned earlier, now business can be done without borders. And so one of the things that implies is that all of a sudden businesses can hire freelancers to perform some of the tasks that they normally would have employed people for. So to give an example, there were certain functions that we had members of staff to carry out before. And now, you know what I do? I'll just go online, go to some of those freelancer websites, hire people from other countries, from India, from Bangladesh, you know, people from other countries who would be real experts at their work and who would be paid less for the services. And guess what? By the time they are done delivering on that job, you would get much better results. What am I trying to say? In this world, now everybody has to be competitive. If you're an employee in an organization and you keep thinking that you are all there is to know about that organization, then maybe you're playing like a big fish in a small pond. Maybe you need to widen your horizon and you need to realize that your real competition is the world. People can literally go on freelancer websites, hire freelancers, and they can get much better services if you're not improving yourself and making yourself into a real asset.
The world has gone global. We all were aware of globalization, but now it has taken a new definition because of the pandemic. It is real. What that means is, if you're going to retain a job as an employee, don't have the mindset of I'm retaining it because they did not fire me before 2021. No. Have the mindset of I have value that I'm adding to this organization. And if for any reason they were going to downsize to one member of staff, because of the value I'm bringing on board, I will be that member of staff. See, you should be valuable. People who are valuable, do not necessarily announce that, see me, oh, I am valuable. No, that's not how to announce your value. If you are truly valuable, the entire organization will recognize your value. So if nobody recognizes that value, maybe you should ask yourself a question. Am I really valuable? What exactly do you bring to the board? What are you bringing to the table? What extra service, what additional value are you offering to your employer, to your organization? What are you doing differently? And then, the other thing is many people have this strange mindset of, I've gone to school, I have my BSc, I've probably done my master's. That is all I need in terms of education and learning. No. There are new skills that are required in the world of work. There are skills coming up daily. What are you doing to position yourself? What skills are you learning? What new thing are you acquiring? What new knowledge are you gaining? What trainings? With the pandemic also, a lot of the online e-learning platforms have been able to partner with universities to provide free courses. Which of those free courses have you taken? And sometimes, even the paid ones, have you done anything to up your value and pay for what you need for that next level? See, the world has moved. I think we said that like a million times already.
Yes, and I think that one really useful tip in determining how valuable you are to an organization is to measure your value in terms of numbers. When I was joining this organization, they had 5 customers. Because of my work here, now they have 7 customers. So my work has added 2 customers to them. That is progress. Or we were able to produce so units of a particular item because of my expertise. I have measures, I have numbers to be able to quantify the work that you do. Because saying things like, I go to the office very early and I leave very late, I'm always sweating like a Christmas goat, I'm working so hard, in fact, my employer is so wicked. Those are things I hear a lot in Nigeria, and they are meaningless, because as an employer, sincerely speaking, by the time you evaluate a lot of these people, you find out that they are not contributing anything to your bottom line. You can have unskilled labor, far cheaper, that would still produce better results for you. So I think that maybe as an employee, you need to be able to think in terms of figures and in terms of what you really are contributing to the bottom line of that organization. As entrepreneurs, I think that one of the most important things that we've learned has been about association, associating with the right people, and maybe also cutting off certain relationships, being deliberate about which relationships to cut off. And so maybe I can explain it this way. It's very much like being an eagle and you are surrounded by chickens. Without meaning to sound unfair to the chicken, eagles and chickens don't mix. And so if you're an eagle, then you shouldn't be in the midst of chickens. If you're in the midst of chickens, no matter how much you care about those chickens, they're going to keep slowing you down. They will keep weighing you down, and you will never reach your true potential. You know why? Because eagles are very different from chickens. Eagles are meant to fly. Chickens are not really made for flight. The best they can do is fly very short distances. So there is that difference. There's the fact that eagles are made to be very big. Chickens are, the biggest of chickens is still very small compared to an eagle. There's also the fact that chickens eat whatever they see. They eat whatever is on the ground. They eat whatever is in front of them. Chickens keep eating. Chickens cannot delay gratification. Chickens have to eat. They keep eating. But eagles don't do that. Eagles eat only at certain heights. Eagles eat on high rocks. Eagles fly very high distances, and they fly for very long distances as well, to be able to find what to eat. So eagles are not careless. They are very much unlike chickens. In fact, I think that's another very important difference, is that when chickens are born or when they are hatched, chickens, you would find them enjoying all the comforts. The mother hen takes care of the chick. If you have chickens, maybe if you are a farmer and you're raising them for the market, you brood, you allow that chick to go through brooding. You provide a very comfortable environment, and to a good extent you maintain that comfortable environment all through. You give the chicken as much comfort as it needs so that it can keep laying eggs for you. Eagles don't do that. When the eaglet is hatched, it gets some comfort, but as soon as it begins to mature, you know what the mother eagle does? The mother eagle begins to kick it out. It begins to stir the nest, begins to make the nest very uncomfortable for the eaglet. And after some time, the mother eagle begins to push out the eaglet. So you see eaglets growing up in discomfort. And what that discomfort does to them is that it helps them to fly. Because after it gets to a level, they become uncomfortable staying in the nest with their mother. They begin to look for ways to express themselves better. The eagle has one big secret. It knows how to ride on the wind. So when there's a storm, when there is discomfort all around, when every other person is complaining, when every other bird is looking for cover, the eagle goes right into the storm and then begins to ride above it, because the eagle is soaring on the wind. You see, right now, COVID-19 is a wind. And SARS, at least the economic implications of things like that, those are winds. Real eagles might initially experience some discomfort, but as a real eagle, you can learn how to master the wind and how to soar above it. Why? Because you're an eagle and not a chicken. The last point that I think I should make about eagles and chickens is you just look at them. Look at the way chickens communicate. They are always talking. Cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. They are always chattering up and down, and that is all they do. They chatter and then they eat. They eat anything from stones to earthworms to even their own excrement. They are eating and they are chattering. Many people are like that. They are always talking about their employer. They are always complaining about their boss. They are always talking about other members of staff. They are always gossiping. They are chattering like chickens. You see, when you meet people like that, run away from them. You know why? Because they are chickens. They are destined for the pot. They cannot be successful. They do not have what it takes to fly. People who truly fly don't have the time to be chattering up and down. People who truly fly cannot eat just anything. People who truly fly cannot accept just any kind of information and do not live their lives carelessly. Being an eagle is a very strategic and a very deliberate process, and it is also a process of association, because you must remember, eagles and chickens don't mix. If you truly are an eagle, COVID-19 is not an excuse. The state of Nigeria is not your excuse. You spread out your wings and fly.
And I love the analogy of the chicken and the eagle, because I think that for us, one of the critical things that we learned was that certain people had to be weeded out for us to be established. And that said, your association is everything. See, the truth is, you can't be going in direction A and you need to take route 1, and then you're in the same cab with someone going in direction Z and they need to take route 20. It's not going to happen. Both of you are not going to arrive at your destination. So it's better that you're in the right vehicle with the right set of people. And association it goes beyond, the people that look up to you. There's also association on the same level, people that are your peers, your colleagues, association with those who have gone ahead of you, parents, mentors, coaches, all those people. Find your rhythm, find your association, know the people that you need in your space. And if a person's time has expired in your space, feel free to let them go. 2020 was a tough year. You see, you don't know your friends in good times. I know it is when the storms come and the nest is shaking. That is when you know who your people are, because your people will stay with you in spite of the storm. Your people will encourage you. Your people will remember you. But you see, wealth has many friends. When there are no storms, when there are no storms and everything is going well and you're looking all good and happy, everybody wants to flock around you. But you see, you must not be foolish. That was one of the things we learned. We learned how not to be foolish. If people have shown you that in your stormy seasons, they are not loyal or committed to you, don't out of sentiments, drag them along into the promised land. In fact, now that I mentioned the promised land, why did Moses not enter into the promised land association?
He was carrying chickens. He was an eagle who was trying too hard to carry chickens into the promised land. And even God had left the chickens alone. I mean, he didn't abandon them, but he had decided that those chickens were not going to enter the promised land. So why did he carry their matter beyond
more
God,
than God himself,
such that he ended up also not entering into the promised land himself?
And that is so instructive, because many people have missed their promised lands because of the chickens.
Yes, they are too busy associating with people who don't have their best interests at heart. You see, as much as it is good to try to, you do your best for people, you try your best to even maybe change them if they are not showing some of the signs that you think are essential for success, you do your best for them. However, there comes a stage where you have to realize that people they are entitled to their own choices.
Exactly.
And the people who refuse to be on, the same wavelength with you are going to drag you down. So I think that maybe one of the biggest lessons that we learned in the year 2020 was that lesson of not being sentimental about friends, not being sentimental about people around us, even people in our workspace,
yes,
people in our environment, employees, our people, not being sentimental. Because if people are dragging you down and you keep allowing them to drag you down, then after some time you're going to be on the ground.
And
so maybe you need to free yourself.
Anybody for that.
Yes,
because
it will be your fault.
Exactly.
You are the driver of your own life. So don't keep dragging yourself down with sentiments. This person is my brother's cousin's friend. No. Forget the sentiments. When it is time to move forward, any weights that are holding you back, cut them off. What else did we learn in the year 2020?
I think that in the year 2020, we also learned to be grateful. We learned what gratitude really means. Because oftentimes we're always looking for miracles in the new things, forgetting that the ability to be sustained all through is probably bigger a miracle than the miracle of new things. So I think that for us, it was realizing and gaining the right perspective. That yes, the things that we probably looked for did not happen the way we wanted them to happen. But look at us, we're still standing. We're here in 2021. It's a new year, it's a year filled with possibilities. I'm so excited just thinking about 2021. Does it mean that the challenges are over? Not necessarily. For example, we're still in a pandemic, that hasn't changed. However, you see, it may not have changed outside, but if our perspective, our attitude, if it changes, then ultimately everything else will change. So we learned to be truly grateful. We learned to celebrate the ordinary, things, everyday, repeated reoccurrences, that brought us to where we are. And then, of course, we look out for the big things, but we also know that the miracle is not always essential in the big things. In fact, I love the story of the children of Israel. You see, they went through the wilderness. They spent 40 years. In those 40 years, I love the report that in those 40 years, their shoes did not get bad. How does the Bible say? I can't remember. Their clothes did not wear out. That was a miracle. That was beyond the ability to be buying clothes and changing shoes in the wilderness. No, it is called sustenance. That is, in fact, what sustainability is built on. It shows that we understand that there is a past. We understand that there is a process. We understand that there is a future. But we also understand that we are going to be
that we're
there.
Going through all of that is because we're alive and we're able to go through all those things. And like you said, the seemingly little things. In a pandemic, you get to appreciate those little things because you see people, you hear about people who get infected or who are affected in some way. Some lose their jobs, some even lose their lives, some spend a lot of time in the hospital. And for the people who are in the hospital, they may not lose their lives eventually, but that 1 week or the 2 weeks in which they're not able to do any other thing but recover, that is time that helps them to become grateful for the ability to move around and for the ability to get to do stuff. So for a business as well, sometimes it is not, maybe making the kind of money that you want. that might not be the miracle. That might not be what to be happy about. Maybe it is even just the fact that you're still in business,
yes,
and you're still standing, and you're able to launch out in a bigger and a better way sometime later. Maybe that is all that you need for now. So being grateful for the small things, I think that is an attitude that can help for 2021. This is our gift to you for the new year. We just felt that it would be nice to share our own experiences and our own learnings from year 2020. And I believe that this has really been worth your while. So I hope to see you in the very next edition. Again, Happy New Year.
Happy New
and
Year.
have the very best of 2021.